Kingmaker's Player's Guide. Brevoy is a proud land known throughout Glorian for producing able warriors, regal nobles, and clever rogues. Yet Brevoy's two regions, Isia and Rostland, have long held one another in contempt and now stand on the verge of civil war. Both Isia and Rostland were independent nations until Coral the Conqueror's barbarian armies and the Red Dragon servitors united the region into a single kingdom 2 centuries ago. Until recently, the iron rule of House Rogovia maintained a fragile peace between the two regions, but a decade ago, House Rogovia mysteriously disappeared, and the conniving leaders of Isia's House Saratova supplanted them as Brevoy's rulers. Now a labyrinthine political landscape plagues the nation, full of secret alliances, political loyalties, and nefarious plots. Civil war seems inevitable. In Rostland, to the south, the Swordlords see in many Isia's recent political moves the swift approach to such a war. They rightfully fear such an event, for Rostland is smaller than Isia. It has fewer armies, and its rolling hills and grasslands offer very little in the way of natural defenses. Worse, unlike Isia, those northern borders stretch along the Lake of Mists and Veils, which offers some defense. Rostland's southern border lies along a stretch of wilderness infested with bandits and monsters. If Brevoy falls into civil war, it won't be long at all before the violent, opportunistic vultures to the south move to take advantage of Rostland's problems. The southern region of wilderness is called the Stolen Lands. While these lands are technically a part of the River Kingdoms, several of which have advanced claims in the past, Rostland has long viewed them as stolen from it by bandits and monsters. Many attempts have been made to settle the Stolen Lands, but to date, none have succeeded, making these 33,000 square miles of unclaimed wilderness the largest swath of unclaimed land in the entire River Kingdoms. As tensions mount in Brevoy, some of Rostland's swordlords hope to change that fact. They have issued charters to several groups of adventurers, sending them south into the Stolen Lands. These initial charters are simple enough. Reopen the old trade routes along the rivers and scatter or defeat the bandits who have made them too dangerous to use. Beyond that, it seems apparent that Rostland wants to encourage new nations to grow in this region, and believes that by supporting these nascent kingdoms as allies, it'll gain loyal support in the upcoming conflict with Isia. It's a bold and brilliant political move, for if Rostland turns its own resources to the task, not only would such a move weaken its defenses against the north, but the blatant power grab would certainly force Isia's hand. By sending free agents south, the sword lords of Rostland hope to create new allies without sacrificing their own position of power in Brevoy. Yet, as with most complex and brilliant plans, there are plenty of opportunities for disaster. The Kingmaker PCs. Your group of characters begins the Kingmaker adventure path as one of 4 groups sent south into the Stolen Lands to defeat the bandits and hopefully establish one of 4 new nations in the River Kingdoms. It certainly won't be an easy task. Before any such settlement can even begin, the bandits and monsters must be dealt with, and once that initial task is done, the dangers will only increase. As you struggle to foster a fledgling kingdom, build up its cities, and expand its farmlands, your group is destined to face rival warlords, ferocious beasts, strange cults, invading barbarian hordes, and even the mysterious Fey Denzians of the near-mythical First World. Can you tame the Stolen Lands and forge a lasting settlement amid such opponents? Who will survive to rule your kingdom? Who among you possesses the makings of a king? The Kingmaker's Player's Guide is intended to provide context for creating characters from the nation of Brevoy or surrounding region who wish to play the role of the Stolen Lands transformation. In this campaign, your character will explore vast wildernesses and settle them, build cities and nations, and even fight wars against opposing kingdoms. Many of those usual campaign elements are supported by additional rules that appear in other volumes of Kingmaker Adventure Path. Your GM can provide you with the information you need to explore, build, conquer, and war as the need arises in each adventure. As a special preview, some of these elements are presented at the end of this guide, so you have all of the blank forms and hex paper you need to track your adventure and achieve in the Stolen Lands. The following pages outline qualities of typical members of all 7 core races and 11 core classes. They should allow you to create any combination thereof within the framework of the Kingmaker adventure path. Characters of all alignments, religions, and nations of origin have a place in Brevoy and the River Kingdoms, and the following suggestions should serve as a spark of concept or background within your would-be nation builder. You'll also find several new traits specific to Kingmaker Adventure Path to better customize your character and link her to the campaign's setting and plot. Stolen Land Explorers. Your group is but one of 4 groups chartered by the Sword Lords to explore and settle the Stolen Lands. Here's what you need to know of the 4 regions of the Stolen Lands and who Brevoy sent to explore them. If you wish to learn more, your character will need to ask around once the campaign begins. The Greenbelt. Dominated by woodland known as the Gnarl Marches and the rolling hills of the Camelands, this region is the one your group has been charted to explore. Bandits are particularly rife in this area, and the rumors that they've organized under the banner of the bandit warlord who calls himself the Stag Lord are particularly troubling. You are to explore as much of the northern half of the Greenbelt as you can, and if possible, to find out more about this Stag Lord and remove the bandit threat from the region. Other ruined problems in the region include a tribe of mites, a tribe of kobolds, mischievous fae, and numerous dangerous monsters and wildlife. Glenabon Uplands. The Sword Lord sent a relatively experienced band of adventurers into the westernmost reach of the Stolen Lands, an area that is supposedly under the rule of the Bandit Kingdom of Pitax, although the River Kingdom has done little to prove its claim over this area. The Slough. The eastern Stolen River runs through the swamp known as the Hook-Tongue Slough. Rumor holds that the Sword Lord sent actual Brevik government agents into this swampy area. Yeoman Heights. The easternmost reach of the Stolen Lands contains a low mountain range and bordered the long-ruined realm of Labaria. The Sword Lord sent a band of mercenaries into this region, rumor holds. Races. Amid the constant threat of civil war, the inhabitants of Brevoy have more pressing concerns than their neighbor's race, and few judge a person on race alone. Brevins value custom and loyalty regardless of race, thus anyone who adheres to local traditions enjoys a high degree of tolerance and acceptance. As such, the region boasts a diverse population comprised of nearly every race and ethnicity on Glorian. Note that you don't have to be from Brevoy to play in the Kingmaker adventure path, but since the campaign begins with your character charted by the Sword Lords of Restov, and your initial approach into the Stolen Lands is from Brevoy, you should still take into account how members of your race and class function in this northern kingdom. Dwarves. Although typically rare in the northeastern Avestan, dwarves exist in small numbers in almost every community in Brevoy. Many serve as town blacksmiths, masons, militia quartermasters, or pawnbrokers. The small mining village of Burderton in eastern Rosslyn has an overwhelming dwarven citizenry. Most dwarves in the region can claim at least one relative or acquaintance that calls the hamlet home, and gem and ore trades from Burderton travel throughout the area peddling their wares. Rumors of untapped and unclaimed mines hidden within the Stolen Lands are enough to get most dwarves interested in exploring the wilderness. Elves. Full-blooded elves are rare in Brevoy, generally preferring to live in Kionin, further to the south. A fair number of rebellious elves, however, immigrated from their homeland up the Sullen River to Brevoy. Often, forlorn elves pass through Brevoy on their way south to Kionin to live amongst their people, and some find the region admirable that they never complete their journey. Although lately, others have chosen to stay after the discreet route down the river through the Sullen Lands was closed because of hostilities from bandits and indigenous tribes of Boggart, lizardfolk, and even trolls. The Brevik city of Restrov boasts one of the largest concentrations of elves in the region. Long ago, the elves maintained a stronger presence in the region, and rumors of surviving elven ruins scattered throughout the most remote reaches of the Solons have long intrigued elven scholars and historians. Gnomes. The boundaries between Golorian and the First World are not consistent. In some places, like the Sullen River Basin, these barriers are unusually thin. The barriers thin yet further, rumor holds, in the Stolen Lands, and certainly Fae are a powerful force in the region. Many believe that the influence of the First World over the Stolen Lands is the primary reason why none have managed to tame the wilderness. Regions like these have long drawn gnomes to their proximity, and tales of gnomes' expeditions to explore the Stolen Lands are quite common, as are tales of expeditions becoming lost and are never heard from again. Optimistic gnomes claim that these vanishings are proof that the Stolen Lands hide pathways into the First World. Gnomes have a strong presence in the River Kingdom and have established communities there, such as Thom and Artuum. Enclaves of less civilized gnome exist in the Echo Wood near the Numerian border, Embeth Forest, and Brevoy's Granzi Forest. Through these schematic sects tend to keep mostly to themselves. Full of interesting sights and new experiences, the region presents a perfect spectacle for gnomes who enjoy the variety of people and places that can be found there. Half-elves, often the victims of unfounded stigmatization in communities of primarily human or elven populations, half-elves typically find Brevoy a welcoming land. The Chelish and Teldon upper classes have long exiled their embarrassing, if common, illegitimate half-elf progeny to the unruly river kingdoms, and as a result, many of the region's half-elves claim that some noble heritage, or even if such claims aren't formally recognized. Other half-elven settlers in the region are the result of the trysts between locals and elves from the nearby Keonan. Regardless of their origin, half-elves find their adaptable nature well-suited to Brevek life, especially those settlements in which the adherence to local custom is paramount of concern. Many half-elves rise to the position of power thanks to their ability to roll with political changes and bypass unexpected social impediments. Half-orcs. Throughout the civilized world, half-orcs suffered ostracism and prejudice, yet many find Brevoy not merely tolerant of their kind, but in fact refreshingly accepting. Brevins don't view half-orcs with the same disdain that the half-breeds receive in other parts of the world, and any half-orc who adheres to the strict provincial customs of the land achieves the same level of acceptance that a similarly accomplished full-blooded human would. Half-orcs blessed with the less overtly bestial features may attempt to pass for human, keeping the unseen conditions of their birth a closely guarded secret and leaving their past behind as they start again in a whole new slate of Brevoy or the wild river kingdoms. Some embrace their heritage, however, and are rewarded. Warlords among feuding city-states often recruit half-orcs to serve as elite soldiers, officers, and law enforcement, valuing their blend of strength and cunning. Halflings. Brevin halflings tend towards transient lifestyles that shuffle them through Brevoy and the neighboring river kingdoms every few years. The Fifth River Kingdom denounces slavery as an abomination, and the inhabitants uphold this tenet of the land as earnestly as they do any other. As a result, the river kingdoms have become a haven for escaped or freed slaves, especially Chelish halflings, attempting to start a new life without the fear of bondage. A strong halfling liberation movement has taken root in the region, and the freedom fighters from across Avestan often congregate in the northern river kingdoms and southern Brevoy, consolidating their power and plotting emancipation raids throughout the Inner Sea. Non-crusading halflings often work as street performers, pickpockets, or legitimate shop or tavern owners. Their natural parchment for stealth and showmanship makes them valuable assets to both the ruling elite and the underground criminal organizations. The opportunity to help shape the kingdom from the ground up to build a civilization where halflings can be a significant part of the leadership could well be a draw to any ambitious halfling. Humans. Humans constitute the most populous race in and around Brevoy, as they do throughout Glorian. Ethnic Teldons make up well over half the region's human population. Many trace their lineage back to the explorers and soldiers who first tamed the wild countryside ages ago. Descendants of Coral's conquering army possess strong Kellet bloodlines, as do the barbaric hordes of nearby Numeria. Spring and autumn bring fleets of Arisian flatboats to the Sullen's waterways, as the nomadic people make their seasonal migration between the banks of Lake Encarthen and the Lake of Mists and Vales. Because of the region's penchant for attracting outsiders from around the world, Chelish, Kelishite, Tien, and Ulfin visitors commonly pass through and make new homes in the river kingdoms, many outcast sanctuaries. Classes. People from all walks of life call Brevoy home, and the region's population consists of members of every class. While some classes are more prevalent than others, characters of all sorts can find a niche within the eclectic society. As the expedition to reclaim the Stolen Lands prepares to embark, PCs with any set of skills and abilities have the potential to play an important role in the region. Barbarians. Most of Brevoy's barbarians hail from the nearby nation of Numeria, where the Proto-Kelid tribes bow to the will and power of the mysterious Technic League. Numerians often hold strong superstitions about both magic and technology, and many barbarians in the region share this wariness, even those from the wildlands of Eobaria to the east. Many Brevik communities adhere to the strict customs and cultural mores, and don't permit variation from these traditions. As such, barbarians are rarely accepted by more piratical settlements. They often find employment as bouncers, mercenaries, and toughs for the region's shadier factions, though in rare instances they may hold prominent positions among city watches or standing armies. Their generally wild nature makes the class well suited for exploration and guerrilla warfare in the less tame river kingdoms to Brevoy's south. The primary barbarian tribe within the Stolen Lands themselves is known as the Tiger Lords. It's a violent tribe, though, and unsuitable for PC barbarians to hail from. Recommendations. Wilderness exploration plays a major role in Kingmaker, so skills like acrobatics, climb, handle animal, perception, survival, and swim will be quite useful. Bards. In a nation balanced on the edge of civil war, diplomats, spies, and political strategists are a vital part of Brevik society. A person skilled in the art of flattery, embellishment, and subtlety has a near limitless opportunity, and bards frequently serve as rulers' trusted advisors, envoys, and moles. King Nolski Sertova employs an army of bards who fight his battles not with sharpened blades, but with the golden words and poisoned lies among the taverns, barracks, and throne rooms of House Sertova's enemies and allies alike. This emphasis on verbal combat doesn't mean that the bard in the region lack competence in physical combat, however. Many members of the class receive training in the exclusive dueling schools of the Eldori Swordlords in Rostland. Whether bards earn their way by weaving through the upper echelons of power, or singing for their dinner in the shady dockside taverns, they rarely lack stories to tell or secrets to keep in Brevoy. Recommendations. Diplomatic interactions between tribes, nations, and other groups, as well as the ability to lead armies and nations effectively, can play a significant role in Kingmaker. Skills like bluff, diplomacy, intimidate, and sense motive should be helpful quite often. All knowledge skills will be useful at different points during the adventure path, but those having to do with the wilderness, Fae, and the First World, and the intricacies of running a kingdom will be most useful, typically geography, local, nature, nobility, and planes. Clerics. The faiths represented in Brevoy are as varied as the eclectic population that calls the region home. Each faith places an emphasis on the clergy teaching its followers diligency and leading by example. The nation's war-torn past, as far back as Cole's conquest of the land, has provided Gorm with a strong following, especially among the Iberian descendants of House Rogovia. The lawless nature of the northern region of Isia supports freedom-loving churches such as those of Calistria, Caden-Kellion, and Desna, while the region's more nefarious factions often venerate Norberger for his influence over the subterfuge and thievery. Travelers on the treacherous waters of the Sullen River frequently encounter priests or shrines dedicated to Hansper, the god of rivers and river travel, while the wild landscape of the southern Rostland draws clerics for both Aristil and Gazra, who wish to help civilization thrive in the threatening environment. In fact, worship of Aristil was once quite common among the Taldons who attempted to settle the Stolen Lands, and the ruins and lost temples depicted to Aristil are still said to lie hidden in the wilderness here. Recommendations. Aristil and Gorm are the two deities with the strongest presence in Kingmaker Adventure Path, but all the deities listed above make excellent choices for clerical worship. Druids. Many Brevan communities on the border of the untamed Stolen Lands employ druids in roles traditionally held by clerics, especially in small, rural villages on the edge of civilizations. Citizens consider a druid's mastery over nature incredibly valuable. Unlike the fertile farmland of the northern Rosslands, the waterlogged wilderness of the Stolen Lands and the barren hills of Isia provide little in the way of arable fields, creating a high demand for anyone who can keep the encroaching wilderness under control around what few crops do exist. Many druids in the region venerate Hosper or Gozra, focusing more on the latter's affirmation with water than the other's aspects of nature. Through adherents of the more general green faith are not uncommon, Brevin druids conventionally possess a natural affinity with plants, animals, water, or weather, though those who travel with an animal companion tend to bond with creatures at home both on land and in the region's rivers. Recommendations. The following animals are logical choices for the druid for operating the Stolen Lands: badger, wolverine, bear, bird, boar, cat, big or small, blood caiman, crocodile, dog, horse, pony, snake, viper, and wolf. From the bestiary, the following additional choices are logical: dire bat, dire rat, giant frog, mastodon, elephant, and gnarlmarch mugger, monitor lizard. Finally, there are two new animals introduced in the Pathfinder Adventure Path number 31, the elk and the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. Fighters. The esteemed and exclusive schools of the Eldori Sword Lords train many of Brevoy's numerous fighters, especially in the southern region of Rossland. These proud duelists long resisted the authority of House Rogovia and have earned a globe-spanning reputation for their martial prowess. As such, ambitious swordsmen from distant lands make their way to Restov with the hopes of joining the Eldori's illustrious ranks. Similarly, eager warriors often work as mercenaries, bodyguards, or muscle for those wishing to earn or maintain influence in the land where wealth and power are only secure if well defended. Alternatively, expeditions to tame the wilderness and establish new outposts of civilization benefit greatly from skilled military technicians, particularly with the threat of war ever looming on the horizon. That said, the harsh landscape of the Stolen Land gives no quarter to heavily armored or mounted warriors. Those few who exist hold fearsome reputations from their prowess and effectiveness on the battlefield. Recommendations. All manner of weapons and armor exist in the Stolen Lands, but specific legend speaks of certain types of powerful magic weapons being hidden in the region, particularly axes, bows, and swords. Monks. Sometimes the lawless and mercurial lands of Brevoy does not lend itself to the disciplined, meditative lives of most monks, and few call the region home. Occasional eccentric vagabonds make their way through the region, bound for far-flung monasteries or shrines. These wanderers sometimes pause for weeks or months at a time to rest their weary feet, find brief employment to fund their next leg of their journey, or isolate themselves in a hidden forest hermitage. In almost every case, though, the transient moves on to other, more welcoming parts of Glorian. The rare monk who resides in the region permanently might dedicate her life to maintaining order in some more archaic city of Isia, perhaps even going undercover among the thieves or assassins' guild. Recommendations. While there are no significant monk orders or monasteries in the Stolen Lands yet, a monk's ability to self-sufficient should be quite helpful in the campaign. See the Barbarian and Bard recommendations for skill selection choices. Paladins. Holy warriors are relatively uncommon in the generally lawless and wild reaches of Brevoy and the River Kingdoms, though they are not completely absent in the region. Most common in central Brevian settlements, paladins of Abadar continually work to maintain peace and trade between Isia and Rossland, despite the growing threat of civil war. The verdant landscape to the south attracts Aristil's faithful, who often dedicate their lives to aiding smaller communities in need of protection or guidance, acting as sheriffs, mayors, or even religious leaders. As Brevoy prepares its expeditions into the Stolen Lands to establish a stable settlement, there are paladins of both faiths flock to Restov to be part of the undertaking to push back the wilderness and make a civilized foothold in the otherwise uninhabited region. Alternatively, more than a few Iomedan crusaders hear of an unexpected calling as they traverse the Sullen River on their way to Mendev and the Worldwound and end up staying in Brevoy to combat evil there instead of on the battlefields to the north. Recommendations. Aristil is the best choice for a divine patron for a paladin, for his presence and influence is strong in the Stolen Lands. See the Bard recommendations for suggestions on social skill choices. Given the focus on wilderness exploration and the possibility late in the game for jousting and similar competitions, focusing on mounted combat is not a bad choice for a paladin. There are still some dungeons involved, but most of the dungeon locations in Kingmaker are relatively small. You won't have to worry much about leaving your mount behind for an entire adventure. Rangers. In the feral Stolen Lands and the surrounding wilderness, travel depends on daring trailblazers unafraid to lead armies, dignitaries, and merchants from one kingdom to the next, either on the treacherous waterway of the Sullen River or on harsh overland routes. Dense woods and fetid swamps necessitate less regimented armies, and rangers tend to function as effective guerrilla soldiers and scouts. As such, many communities in southern Brevoy and the River Kingdoms employ rangers as the backbone of both their offensive and defensive military strategies, retaining them as protectors against barbarian raids, vain ambushes, and unscrupulous bandits. The region also attracts countless bounty hunters who seldom lack clients, local or foreign, eager to recruit their service. Recommendations. As the barbarian recommendations for good choices for wilderness-themed skills, an ability to track well is particularly valuable in numerous Kingmaker encounters. See the Druid recommendations for logical animal companion choices. A ranger's best choice for favorite enemy in Kingmaker include the following: animals, dragons, fae, humanoids, boggards, humans, giants or reptilian, magical beast, monstrous humanoid, plant or undead, and vermin. Good favorite terrain choices include forests, mountains, plains, swamps, and water. Rogues. Rogues are prominent in northern Brevoy, where House Saratova has long controlled powerful thieves' guilds, organized crime syndicates, and spy networks out of Port Ice. Since the disappearance of House Rogovia in 4699 AR, they have dispatched discreet agents throughout both Issia and Rossland to consolidate their power in the absence of the traditional ruling family, and the family feel that their scion Nolski Sotova rule legitimizes its shameless method. Even in the more stable region of Rostland, rogues are plentiful, often migrating north from the River Kingdoms, where pirate bands and roadside brigands give credence to the idiom as thick as thieves. In many cases, rogues find themselves in the River Kingdoms after ending up on the wrong side of the law in their homelands, and the region's inhabitants frequently take new names and invent elaborate backstories upon arriving at the Sullen Valley, a tradition that carries into Brevoy as well. Recommendations. Kingmaker includes traps, although they are not as overwhelmingly prevalent as are hazards, ambushes, and social situations, where rogues can excel. A rogue talent at stealth and scouting, particularly in wilderness areas, should do well. See the Barbarian and Bard recommendations for good skill and selection choices. Sorcerers. Sorcerers, with their untrained mastery of arcane mysteries, have long found the wilds of northeastern Avestan alluring. Often viewed as uncontrolled compared to wizards, many sorcerers immigrate to Brevoy and the River Kingdoms to obtain some semblance of acceptance and anonymity. The realm of the First World touches the material plane in strange ways in the Stolen Lands along the southern border, resulting in many native sorcerers drawing their power from the Fae bloodlines. Brevoy's history with red dragons has led to the prominence of draconic bloodline sorcerers. Members of the ambitious Brethik nobility often belong to destined bloodlines and find that fate frequently intervenes on their behalf as they rise in power and influence. While these bloodlines appear most often in Brevoy and the River Kingdoms, all bloodlines exist in the region. Recommendations. In Kingmaker, the following bloodlines fit best thematically, although all bloodlines should be equally useful in combat situations: Destined, Dragonic, Elemental, Fae. See the Wizard recommendations for familiar choices if you want to play an arcane bloodline sorcerer. Wizards. Scholars of the arcane might find themselves in Brevoy for countless reasons. Illusionists and enchanters, for example, often travel to the region to study the mysterious First World, the Fey realm that touches Lorien in enigmatic and unexplained ways in the untamed wilderness in the nation's southern border. The city of Skywatch in eastern Brevoy also attracts throngs of wizards who hope to unlock its arcane secrets and break through the impenetrable seal that isolates the settlement from the outside world for the last decade. Wizards skilled in the art of evocation generally find employment as battlefield artillery in the armies of the region's various feuding kingdoms. Other arcanists make their way to Brevoy and the River Kingdoms out of necessity when their experiments and studies get them into trouble in their homelands, most often those mages who tamper with the very forces of life and death. Recommendations. See the Bard recommendations for good knowledge skill choices. All of the arcane schools should be equally useful throughout Kingmaker. While any sort of bonded object works well in Kingmaker, wizards who opt instead to take a familiar might wish to choose creatures that make sense for the region in which the adventure path takes place. Logical choices for familiars based on the region's climate include all of the basic familiars in the Pathfinder RPG core rulebook, except for monkeys. Good choices for improved familiars, again based on Kingmaker's theme, include celestial fiendish animals, dire rats, mephits, and pseudo-dragons. Legendary shy creatures, known as carbuncles, are also available as improved familiars as well. These creatures are detailed in the Pathfinder Adventure Path number 31, so ask your GM for details if you're interested in taking one of these somewhat comical creatures as a familiar. Leadership roles. Once your party begins building a nation in Kingmaker, each PC can take on the role of a leader in that nation. As a leader, you'll be able to apply one of your character's ability score modifiers to the kingdom's economy, loyalty, or stability, increasing the kingdom's statistics and helping its chances for success. Most leadership roles allow you to choose one of two ability scores to apply, so if you are particularly interested in having your character play a specific role along the Kingmaker's leadership, consider focusing on an appropriate ability score. The 11 leadership roles and their associated ability scores are listed below. Ruler, Charisma. Counselor, Wisdom or Charisma. General, Strength or Charisma. Grand Diplomat, Intelligent or Charisma. High Priest, Wisdom or Charisma. Magister, Intelligence or Charisma. Marshal, Dexterity or Wisdom. Royal Assassin, Strength or Dexterity. Spy Master, Dexterity or Intelligence. Treasurer, Intelligence or Wisdom. Warden, Strength or Constitution. Kingmaker Campaign Traits. The people of Brevoy are a diverse people, and those from many walks of life have answered the call to reclaim the stolen lands. These traits presented in this guide, and in the Pathfinder Character Trait Web Enhancement, recently updated to Pathfinder RPG rules and available at Paizo.com, are designed to help you customize your character, allowing you to further distinguish him from your standard class, as well as to provide a means to help flesh out his history. Presented here are a number of campaign traits that are particularly suitable for characters playing in the Kingmaker Adventure Path. Campaign traits. Campaign traits are tailored to a specific adventure path and give your character a built-in reason to begin the first adventure in a new campaign. Some campaign traits also grant teamwork benefits if you choose to begin a campaign with a character who has a pre-existing relationship with another PC. Campaign traits assume a lot about your character's backstory, but they are meant to help serve as inspiration for a character working to create a detailed and interesting history for her character. You have a certain amount of leeway in adjusting a campaign trait's expected backstory once you've selected which trait is right for you. Just be sure to get your GM's approval before you run with a modified history. All of the following traits revolve around characters making their homes in and around the country of Brevoy, a country deeply involved in the events that touch off the Kingmaker Adventure Path. You can take a look at these traits to get a general, spoiler-free idea of the types of foes and challenges your character might encounter over the course of the adventure path. Knowing that there are going to be elements of exploration, banditry, deception, fey magic, politics, and the like should help you build a character that fits more organically into the campaign you're about to join. These traits all lead your character to become interested in the exploratory effort meant to chart the Stolen Lands, an unclaimed frontier between Bovoy and the River Kingdoms, ruled only by deadly beasts, lurking monsters, capricious fray, brutal bandits, and creatures of legend. Bastard, limited to human characters. One of your parents was a member of one of the great families of Brevoy, perhaps even the line of Rogovia itself. Yet you have no substantive proof of your nobility, and you've learned that claiming nobility without evidence makes you as good as a liar. While you might own a piece of jewelry, a scrap of once rich fabric, or an aged confession of love, none of this directly supports your claim. Thus, you've lived your life in the shadow of nobility, knowing that you deserve the comforts and esteem of the elite, even though the contempt of fate brings you nothing but their scorn. Whether a recent attempt to prove your heritage has brought down the wrath of a noble family's henchmen, or you merely seek to prove the worth of your blood in your veins, you've joined an expedition into the Stolen Lands, hoping to make a name all your own. You take a -1 penalty on all charisma-based checks made when dealing with Brevik nobility, but gain a +1 trait bonus on will saves as a result of your stubborn and individuality. The penalty aspect of this trait is removed if you ever manage to establish yourself as a true noble. Brigand. You hail from the River Kingdoms or the more lawless reaches of Brevoy. Life has been hard for you. Perhaps your parents and siblings were crooks and con artists, or maybe your rough, lonely life led you to fall in love with thieves and worse. You know how to ambush travelers, bully traders, avoid the law, and camp where no one might find you. Recently, you've run into some trouble, either with the law or with other bandits, and you're looking to get away to somewhere no one would ever think to find you. An expedition into the rugged wilderness seems like a perfect way to lie low until the trouble blows over. You begin the campaign with an extra 100 gold pieces in ill-gotten gains. You also gain a +1 trait bonus on bluff, diplomacy, intimidate, and sense motive checks when dealing with brigands, thieves, bandits, and their ilk. Isian. You were raised in northern Brevoy, a land of misty shores and harsh hill lands, of snowy vistas and violet-hued mountains. You are descended from an able and intelligent people and have a grand ambition, a mind alert for opportunity, and a tenacity to fight for your goals, no matter the challenge. You care for little more than achieving your aspirations and opportunities to win wealth and grandeur, for which few costs prove too great. You see yourself as a citizen of Brevoy through and through. The call for champions willing to help take back the country's rightful holdings in the Stolen Lands has inflamed your dreams of profit and possibilities, so you have joined an expedition to quest south. Your agile mind grants you a +1 trait bonus on all will saves made to resist mind-affecting effects. Noble-born. You claim a tangible but legitimate connection to one of Brevoy's noble families. If you aren't human, you were likely adopted by one of the Brevoy nobles, or were instead a favored servant, or even a child friend of a noble scion. Whatever the cause, you've had a comfortable life, but one far from the dignity and decadence of your distant cousins. Although you are associated with the esteemed name, your immediate family is hardly well-to-do, and you found your name to be more of a burden to you than a boon in many social situations. You've recently decided to test yourself to see if you can face the world without the aegis of a name. You have little to real claim or care for. An expedition into the storied Stolen Lands seems like just the test to see if you are really worth the title of noble. Choose one of the following family names and associated benefits. Gares. Your family's long association with the dwarves of the Gulishkin Mountains has left its mark. You ignore the movement penalty for your first 5 feet of rocky, difficult terrain you move through per round. This applies only to terrain made difficult by rocks or terrain. In addition, you gain a +2 trait bonus on appraise checks to assess the value of natural stones or metals. Your family motto is strong as the mountains. Lebeda. Your family's history of trading along the shores of Lake Reichel pervades your blood. As a deft merchant of the region, you gain a bonus language, Dwarven, Elven, Hallet, Gnome, Giant, Halfling, Skald, or Sylvan. Your family motto is Success Through Grace. Lodavka. Your family has made a living off the coast of the Lake of Mists and Vale since before Brevoy existed. You gain a +1 trait bonus on swim checks, and swim is always treated as a class skill for you. Your family motto is The Waters, Our Fields. Midvaed. Your family has long a deep respect for the wilderness and its superstitions about the creatures that dwell there. You gain a +2 trait bonus on all diplomacy checks made to deal with fake creatures, and a +1 trait bonus on will saves made against their spells and supernatural abilities. Your family motto is Endurance Overcomes All. Surtova. Your family is well known for their political agility and scheming natures. You deal +2 damage when attacking a flat-footed opponent while wielding a light or one-handed weapon. Your family motto is Ours is the Right. Pioneer. You have long lived along the southern border of Brevoy, in the shadow of the wilderness known as the Stolen Lands. Life has been hard, but through hunting, trapping, trading, and coaxing crops from the freezing earth, you've learned how to survive on the rugged frontier. With the wilderness ever at your door, you've always learned much about the Denzians and the wild creatures that lurk in the unwholesome land. Your family might even claim holdings in the Stolen Lands, with elders telling stories of being driven from or robbed of a lost ancestral homestead. Fertile farmlands, bountiful orchards, or a hidden mine claim. Whether because of your personal expertise or your familiarity with the borderlands, or in order to reclaim your family's land, you've joined the expedition into the Stolen Lands. You begin play with a horse. You also choose one of the following skills: climb, handle animal, knowledge nature, perception, ride, survival, or swim. You gain a +1 trait bonus on this skill. Rostlander. You were raised in the south of Brevoy, a land of dense forest and rolling plains, of crystalline rivers and endless sapphire skies. You come from hardy stock and were raised with simple sensibilities of hard work, winning, well-deserved gains, and importance of charity and compassion, and the value of personal and family honor. Yours is the country of the Eldori sword lords, and the heroes who refuse to bend before the armies of a violent conqueror. You care little for the matters of politics or nobles, or of deception and schemes, as you are thoroughly brevic. The call for champions willing to expand your land's influence into the Stolen Lands has inflamed your sense of patriotism and honor, and you are joined in an expedition to quest southward. Your hardy nature grants you a +1 trait bonus on all fortitude saves. Sword Scion. You have lived all your life in and around the city of Restov, growing up on the tales of Baron Syrian Aldori and the exploits of your home city's heroic and legendary sword lords. Perhaps one of your family members was an Eldori sword lord, and you have a contract among their members. Or you have dreamed since childhood of joining. Regardless, you idolize the heroes, styles, and philosophies of the Eldori, and have sought to mimic their variant art. Before you can petition to join their ranks, however, you feel that you must test your mettle. Joining an expedition into the Stolen Lands seems like a perfect way to improve your skills and begin a legend comparable to that of Baron Aldori. You begin play with a longsword or Aldori dueling sword, and gain a +1 trait bonus on all attacks and combat maneuvers made with such weapons.